Why do you think that is, that more and more people are seeing run clubs as a way to date rather than Hinge and Tinder? Do you think people are realizing that Hinge and Tinder are short-term things and they're sort of yearning for longer relationships?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think a lot of people, and I know this from like speaking to friends and stuff, have dating app fatigue. And I think they've been around for a while now, but it was so novel that you could go on an app and you'd have endless potential matches at the swipe of a finger. But
if
that
you're a
was okay, maybe. But people, you know, loved that and that was exciting. And then I think it's probably got to a point where actually it's kind of boring, or maybe you've been on a few Hinge dates and they haven't worked out. And I also think people are craving like in-person stuff. I mean, we're not that far on from a pandemic where we literally couldn't be in groups of larger than like 6 people. So I think people are craving that like in-person connection. I think the run club thing has obviously taken off because people can make friends. As I say, you've got like a similar like values and stuff like that. But also it's the same goes for a potential partner. Like we said, if you want someone that's into those things, then you're way more likely to meet them at a run club than the night out. And also a lot of people are attractive because they're in shape. So you can't really avoid that point.
And I've heard that because you've got the endorphins flowing from the run, everyone's much more bubbly and excited.
Everyone's in a good mood. I remember Owen Barrow saying that to me on my podcast, and he's set up the High Performance Club. And he said that, you know, you finish this run, you're on a high, as you say, like endorphins are flowing, and then you're around people who are also feeling the same. And it is such a, like, it's a positive space. Like, it's a really nice environment to be in, whether you're there to like make friends or find a potential partner.
I think people are really yearning for that connection.
Yeah.
And it's not something that really gets mentioned that much, but it feels like we've had a real disconnect from reality in the last few years, especially since the pandemic, which you rightly bring up. And ultimately that's dangerous, because when you get disconnected from reality, you can say ideas that sound good but don't actually work. And I think that's what's been happening over the last few years. And then you add on all these disenfranchised men that aren't getting in relationships. It's a Molotov cocktail for destruction. And I fear the direction that especially young men are heading in, and young women too. But something that I think would be really useful to ask you is, what's something that you wish young men thought or knew that they don't about young women?
Oh my goodness, that's a huge question. Firstly, I'll tell you a little story that happened to me yesterday, because this kind of puts your point into perspective. But I was on the tube and this young guy, he's probably like 20, 21, like stopped me, and he was like, excuse me, like, is this going to Oxford Circus? Is this the Central Line? I was like, yeah. He was super shy. He was like stuttering as he spoke to me. And he was like, oh, I'm challenging myself to talk to more people. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love that. And I think his name was Chris, and he started telling me what he did, and he had like a job in sales and he wanted to like practice his people skills. And it was so interesting because he started off so nervous, like stammering, could barely string a sentence together. And by the end we were having like a really nice chat and told him what I did and stuff. And I think, obviously, I don't know his like personal story, but he seems like someone that hasn't had much opportunity to be social, or maybe hasn't pushed himself to do that. And so I think getting out and in person and having those conversations is so important, because we're also like chronically online nowadays, that you still need to do that. And I just thought it was just so sweet. Like, it literally made me feel like really warm inside. But something I wish young men knew about young women,
or thought, in terms of their attitude.
That's a big question. I guess that like we're not as scary, or I don't know if young boys hold this opinion, that we're not like as scary or judgmental as you might think. And I've had this conversation with a few people, and I want to like tiptoe very carefully, because I do think some young boys and men are a bit scared to approach women out of fear of rejection, or that they might be coming across like they're harassing them in some sort of way, or that it's unwanted attention. And that does happen. Like, I was out on a run this morning, got catcalled like several times. I mean, it pissed me off, but you know, that's just the nature of some men, unfortunately. But most of the time, if you're respectful and polite and you know your boundaries, then most girls are going to receive it quite well. And I think some people don't maybe realize that because they haven't tried to approach girls in person. And this doesn't even have to be romantically. Like, I think you can find really good like friendships with the opposite sex just by talking to them and having an honest conversation and not thinking, oh, but what are the repercussions of this?
Freya India talks about this. She calls it risk aversion. People are more risk averse, both men and women, than ever, because if you've got social media and you can get this instant gratification, you can jump on the hedonic treadmill and scroll on TikTok and be stimulated with the click of a button. And if you're a boy, you can watch porn, you can have your AI girlfriend that speaks to you. Why would you go outside and risk rejection from a girl if you can just stay inside your little bubble?
But then also think about the reward. What reward do you get by staying online and watching porn and talking to AI bots? Like a bit of dopamine, like a bit of satisfaction, but actually meeting someone in real life that you really connect with and you can have experiences with. That's so much better, in my opinion. But you've obviously got to do like the slightly scary bit first.
Mo Gawdat talks about how happiness isn't linked to dopamine at all.
Yeah, he said this to me, and it's so interesting, like knowing the science, because we think that the things that give us that rush of dopamine are the things that equate to happiness. And yeah, you feel happy momentarily. That's what that feeling is. You feel excited. You feel good, like when you do shots at the bar or you watch porn. I don't know. But actually, it's that like serotonin. It's that like steady state of calmness and thinking, I'm okay, I'm safe, life's good. That's where the happiness comes from. Yeah, it was a really interesting point that he brought up.